Staying on the melt theme, this is a tuna melt. All you need here is some canned tuna and a mixing bowl. Try to get the best quality canned tuna you can find. These are two that I have in my store that I think are good quality. This Cento one doesn't look great right away, but those pieces of tuna are much bigger than they look. You want to avoid like Star-Kissed that are just kind of really pasty. That Cento one is nice. This one is even better. What you're looking for is really what this one looks like. It's big pieces of fish. You can see the fiber. This looks like actual fish that was canned. Always try to get it in the olive oil also. I feel like tuna in water, the water is just going to kind of dilute the flavor. So try to find ones that are in oil. But drain that oil off before you mix it. If a little gets in, totally fine, but try to drain out as much as you can. Throw that into a mixing bowl. And now we're going to just try to break this up a little bit. You can get as chunky or as not chunky as you want. If you're going to use this just as tuna salad, you can definitely keep it a little bit bigger. But I think on a sandwich, trying to get it fairly broken up like that is good. We're also going to add in mayo now. You're kind of making a tuna salad on sandwich. That's basically what a tuna melt is. I would say shy a little bit away from using as much mayo as you would use on a regular tuna salad, just because you want it to be a little less liquidy. We're going to salt and pepper this also, but right about there is right where you want it consistency-wise with the mayo. If you want a little bit more, that's fine. But just to also add a variety of color and freshness and flavor to this, I'm going to use up one stalk of a green onion here. I'm definitely going to add the whiter side, the root side, and then I'm going to add about half of the green into the mix now, and then I'm going to top it with a little bit of the green at the very end. But just give that a nice mix and throw it into the fridge. The key of a tuna melt is you want the cold from the tuna in the fridge with the warm of the bread and cheese. So let's move on to the bread. I'm just going to start to warm this bread up because sitting on the counter, it's just kind of room temperature, a little bit cool. But once you get that first side, which is going to be the inside of your bread, warm, we're going to coat the outside with mayo, the side that's currently up as you put them down. I like to use mayo because butter sometimes gets a little soggy on the bread, and I'm trying to avoid that. I don't want it too greasy. This will do very much the same browning, but be just a little less overall greasy. So mayo those up, put them face down, and then as they sit there with the mayo on it, we're going to put on some cheese on one side. If you love cheese, you could do both sides. That's totally fine. And we're just going to let that sit until they get golden brown. Move them around a little bit so they're not just sitting on the same heat patch and they'll brown more evenly. If by the time your bread is fully brown on the other side where you want it, which it is now, and the cheese hasn't melted, you could either put it into a broiler, or I grab a little brulee torch here and just give it a nice little warm up. You don't want that cheese like super runny, but right there is where you want it. And now we're going to grab my special ingredient, cheddar and sour cream chips. These are my favorite chips in general, but I think they work really nice on the sandwich to give it a little texture. I'm going to crush them up in my hand. You could do it in a more sanitary way if you want. You could pre-crush them in the bag. But then I'm going to sprinkle them onto the cheese. Since the cheese is a little melty and a little soft, it'll be nice to put them on there and it'll kind of stick. You won't worry about the pieces falling off. Now we're going to put the tuna on the other side. It is nice and cold right out of the fridge. Try to get a good amount on there, like a nice 1/4 of an inch layer. You want this to be evenly proportioned, so try to get it as even as you want it. Try to bring it to the edges as well. I'm going to top it with some green onion. But if there's not enough tuna on this, it's just going to taste bland. So you want to get a good amount. That way it's nice and evenly proportioned. But now we're ready. I'm going to throw this onto the cheese. It's easier to put the tuna on the other side. That way the chips don't fall off. But now you can see how beautiful brown that bread is. Very similar to the patty melt. And I'm just going to cut it open and look at it. I know I always speak that the diagonal cut is the best. But for this sandwich, I'm going to go straight cut. And it looks beautiful. Obviously, the chips aren't as even looking as I want when you cut it that way, but that's everything I'm looking for in a sandwich. A nice thick layer, the cheese is melted, but the only thing that matters is how does this taste? So let's dive right into it. I'm not a huge tuna fish fan, but this is delicious. The cold of the tuna, the warm of the bread and cheese. It's just a really nice lunch. Absolutely recommend.